Hey, and welcome to a bit of a different episode of Lore Keeper. In this episode, we're going to be doing a complete rundown of the Modern Warfare 3 story arc. Prior to everything that unfolds in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, there was an arms race that took place from 1983 to 1985 between Russia's Omega Group and America's Requiem. The two groups harnessed, studied, and weaponized a special, powerful element called Aetherium, which originated from a dimension known as the Dark Aether. In 1985, when their conflict came to an end, Requiem captured a Dark Aether being called the Forsaken, which was transferred to Liberty Falls, West Virginia. Following this, Requiem's director, Edward Richthofen, had the four department heads, Gregory Weaver, Elizabeth Gray, Mackenzie Carver, and Oscar Strauss, arrested and imprisoned at Terminus Island until their eventual escape in 1991. After the Forsaken's containment and the arrest of the department heads, Requiem was dissolved and succeeded by Project Janus, an as of now mysterious organization once again created and led by Richthofen. Around this time, the CIA also created Operation Deadbolt, an organization designed to fend off any dimensional outbreaks should any happen again. On February 18, 1991, in the West Virginian city of Liberty Falls, a dimensional breach occurred. A once lively town became infested with the undead. Citizens, fellow neighbors, families tearing each other apart. Utter chaos ravaging the town, leaving it in disarray. Not much is currently known about this event, but we do know that a young Crystal Miller was present during the outbreak. And for her, it seemingly just happened out of nowhere. Her mom and dad did what they could to fight through the hordes, escorting their daughter out of the chaos. At Oliver's comics, Crystal's father was jumped, bitten, and turned. Her mother's grip on her wrist tightened, hurrying Crystal further, taking a turn at the motor lodge. The hordes were on both sides, it all seemed hopeless, until Crystal's mom spotted a fire escape. She had Crystal go ahead of her, climbing the ladder as fast as her little arms and legs could take her. Beneath her, she could hear the growls, groans, and screeches of the undead. Looking down to her mother, it was, as she described it, like a boat caught in a hurricane. Her mother's last words to her were, "Run," and so she did. While her mother sank beneath the claws and fangs of the monsters that devoured her, Crystal ran and ran. 3 days passed. The outbreak was contained, but everyone she knew was now gone. Through those 3 days, Crystal hid in a Freedom Fried Chicken until she was discovered by the local biker gang, the Steel Mountain Riders. Rescued, Crystal was brought to live with her aunt and uncle, although the following day she was interviewed by a John Blanchard, a security chief for Project Janus. After doing military work for the New Zealand Defense Force, James Tobias Fletcher, or just Jack, is seconded by the CIA and stationed on Terminus Island as security. In 1993, he is honorably discharged. Still in 1993, through questionable means, Ava is born. Her biological mother was Samantha Maxis, but she also contained spliced DNA from Ravenov and potentially the other Requiem heads, and then carried by Gray for 9 months until her eventual birth. Due to her mother's connection with the Dark Aether, Ava ended up sharing this connection. And upon her birth, a shadowy duplicate of Ava was born at the same time in the Dark Aether. She'd simply be known as the Entity, and as the years passed, the Entity yearned to reunite with her sister, becoming one. Throughout her childhood and adulthood, Ava suffered from hallucinations, schizophrenia, and lucid dreams, seeing an imaginary friend that resembled a shadow, and being prescribed a medication to assist with her migraines and the voices in her head. Unfortunately for Ava, her mother, Dr. Gray, was forced to leave her at only 3 years old. The reason for having to leave isn't currently known, but based on her visible appearance, it seems that Requiem was rapidly aging, and based on how we later find them, seemingly sacrificed their own lives, transporting their life essence into a series of canisters, although that is purely just speculation. With Ava being given to the Jansen family, the Requiem heads decided that Ravenov should be the one to stay behind, watch over Ava from afar, and to ensure her safety and that the Entity never tries to corrupt her. It wasn't until June of 2006 that Ava discovered she was adopted. It happened at school, during a blood type test. Her results simply didn't line up with her parents. Leaving the school early and upset, Ava stormed all the way home, throwing a tantrum in pursuit of her birth certificate. Instead, what she uncovered was a CD-ROM full of research from a scientist named Dr. Elizabeth Gray. It told of another dimension and an element with unique properties. Out of spite, Ava began to study her mother's findings. However, deep down, this was her way of connecting with her mother. After being discharged from Terminus Island, Jack Fletcher went on to perform mercenary work from 2005 to 2011, where in 2011, he'd create his own PMC called Terminus Outcomes. His PMC escalated into becoming one of the largest PMCs in the entire world, always up to date with both weapons and technology. and due to their HQ's location, they weren't in any risk of conflict with the US or NATO nations. In the same year, Viktor Zakayev's father, Imran, passed away from cancer, leaving Viktor alone and in charge of his father's organization that he rebranded to Zakayev Arms, a weapons smuggling group that operated beneath the ultranationalists. In 2012, a new member of the SAS who managed to pass selection at a young age, referred to as the Eternal FNG, would catch the attention of a Captain John Price. This Eternal FNG was none other than Johnny McTavish, who through the next 2 years of training gained the new nickname Soap, due to his ability to clean house quick, and by November of 2019 was specially chosen by Captain Price to be part of his newly formed task force, Task Force 141, greenlit by Kate Laswell. Dialing it back to 2016, Ava Jansen makes a post online discussing her theory on parallel dimensions and the endless potential of resources they could obtain from such a possibility. They wouldn't need to worry about shortages anymore, and there could even be untold discoveries such as an element she calls out, Ethereum. She was mocked, her theories ridiculed. Furthermore, her lab was ransacked by the FBI, her research stolen, and the university she attended expelled her. It was clear she revealed things not intended for the world to know, and this event led to her feeling spiteful towards the CIA and US government. Back to 2019, to bring honor to his father's name and realize his visions for Russia, Viktor Zakayev brought chaos across the city of Verdansk. Task Force 141 and the Shadow Company pursued Zakayev, leading to a series of underground tunnels and missile silos, where Captain Price finally confronted and cornered Zakayev, wounding him and promptly throwing him over the railing and down the missile silo. Through insane odds, Zakayev survived his bullet wound and fall. His plans were foiled, and he was humiliated. Going into hiding, he'd somehow come across highly classified CIA and KGB documents detailing the arms race between Requiem and Omega Group, and the powerful element Ethereum. Believing this could be the weapon he needs in order to realize his father's dreams, he hires the PMC group Terminus Outcomes, as well as Ethereum researcher Dr. Ava Jansen. They'd begin their planning and preparation to obtain the last known remnants of the element. Which brings us to 2021. The remaining vials of Ethereum are located in the city of Urzikstan, where Zakayev, Fletcher, and Terminus Outcome mercenaries infiltrate the city and breach into one of its hotels, where they uncover a sealed room that's been long abandoned. Covered in dust, cobwebs, and technology from the past, and in the center of the room was 4 rotten corpses, their hands plugged into a series of wires connecting to a strange device on the table in front of them. Upon entering the room, the device opened up, revealing 2 Ethereum vials, although interestingly enough, 2 are also missing. Taking the vials, their disturbance has caught the attention of the local police force. Terminus Outcomes fires a rocket towards their vehicles while the police fire back. Pinned down, Zakayev ponders the vial and throws it toward the police. Making a break for it, a sniper hits Zakayev's shoulder, only slowing him down slightly. Before they can make another shot, Zakayev gets in the armored vehicle as the canister makes contact with the ground. It smashes open and a purple fog consumes the entire city. The police force and Terminus Outcomes mercenaries who didn't get to safety rotted. Their eyes hollowed out and became an eerie yellow glow. Even those who were already dead began to rise. An entire city wiped off the map in just mere seconds. Zakayev had found his weapon. Following the outbreak in Urzikstan, Lucas Dobbs and Amy Fang pick up the undead hostiles rampaging through the city's streets, bearing a striking resemblance to the same monsters that Crystal Miller would often talk about. The infection is reported back to the higher-ups, leading to the reactivation of Operation Deadbolt. Kate Laswell appoints Selma Green as the lead of the group for this incursion, as well as a team to operate the needed divisions. Lucas Dobbs and America Amy Fang were recruited for the mission, with Dobbs operating an I-Star UAV for aerial reconnaissance, and Amy Fang acting as the Deadbolt's exfil pilot. Crystal Miller is recruited also, being an expert in firearms and having experienced a similar event in her past. Dr. Hugo Barrera, who was called in due to his expertise on spores, vortices, as well as biology. Color Sergeant Rupinder Kapoor, who is a vehicle mechanic specialist. And finally, Johnny Soap McTavish of Task Force 141 and Sergei Ravanov, specially chosen due to his own experience facing similar hordes. However, Ravanov's background and even age were entirely redacted, leading to McTavish and especially Selma Green to lack any trust towards him, with Selma requesting his removal several times, but Kate denied every single attempt. However, Soap was given orders to take down Ravanov should he try anything. In one of their earliest infiltrations in the Outbreak zone, operators Spaulding, Jackson, and Gibbs dropped into the OZ, with Fang as their exfil. Their objective was to perform a search and rescue on any survivors. Tragically, not a single survivor remained. The city belonged to the dead now. A large horde of zombies spotted the 3 operators, who made a break for it to Fang's helicopter. Jackson and Gibbs managed to get on board, but as Spaulding grabbed hold of the ladder, the dead tore the operator to shreds, leaving only his hands uneaten, which still clung tightly on the hanging ladder. Amy's first encounter with the undead would permanently scar her. Meanwhile, with Zakhaev and Fletcher, the relations have quickly grown tense, with Zakhaev not providing the owed payments, only further adding on to his debt. Fletcher, in an attempt to come up with a means... better make a name for myself. Fletcher, in an attempt to come up with a means to mitigate the debt, asks for a portion of the harvest Ethereum so that they can sell it on the black market. Back with Deadbolt, after acquiring one of the elite corpses from the Outbreak zone, a mimic, Dr. Hugo Barrera performs an autopsy on the creature, noting the unique form of self-defense the creature's molecules exhibit, appearing as though perhaps the Dark Aether itself is feasting off of our own reality and replicating objects or places. Perhaps even people. Needing more information to properly form a theory on this discovery, Barrera has Selma set up HVT hunts for Deadbolt operators. And now, this finally brings us to the game itself. With several squads performing operations in Urzikstan, one of these squads uncovered a series of cryptic ciphers. The ciphers are sent back to Deadbolt HQ, where it is decrypted, and they come to learn that they originate from a Terminus outcome scientist, Dr. Ava Jansen, apparently wishing to defect after learning of Zakhaev's true intentions with Ethereum. Pinpointing her position, Deadbolt operators are sent into the OZ once more to extract Jansen and bring her back to Deadbolt HQ. Fighting their way through the undead masses and Terminus soldiers respectively, Zakhaev taunts Jansen and Deadbolt that their efforts are futile, which is funny in hindsight. Escorting Jansen to the exfil helicopter, they exit the OZ. With Jansen in Deadbolt's custody, Ravenov and Soap escort her to the interrogation room, Selma Green joining them. Ava tells all of Zakhaev's plans, her reason for joining, and that Zakhaev has a powerful vial of Ethereum on him at all times. She offers assistance to help stop Zakhaev. Green removes Ava's restraints, allowing her to assist. In order to stop Zakhaev, Dr. Jansen needs to construct a device capable of destroying Ethereum particles. With the help of Deadbolt's operators, Dr. Jansen has provided the components she needs to construct said device. With help from Dr. Barrera and Kapoor, one of their ether containment vehicles are retrofitted to harness the device that Jansen has created. The modified ACV is dropped into the OZ, having Deadbolt operators escort the vehicle to an Ethereum processor, which is being guarded by a mega abomination. Still though, the Deadbolt operators finish escorting the device, allowing the ACV to begin exterminating the processor while they fend off the mega abomination and the zombie masses. The operation was a success. The ACV destroyed the processor and the local Ethereum in the area, causing the interdimensional threats to collapse. However, the outbreak still persisted across the city. It was only a small success. Green deems this a waste of time and resources. Dr. Jansen rebuttals, informing Green that the device worked. They just need something better, something stronger. Unfortunately for Deadbolt, she doesn't have the knowledge or ability to create such a device. Not without help. Showing an image of Dr. Oscar Strauss, a scientist who worked for Project Endstation during World War II and Requiem in the 1980s. According to Jansen, Strauss's research on an Ethereum neutralizer is currently in Terminus's possession at one of their outposts. And so, an assault is carried out on Legacy Baranov's outpost, his men taken down by Deadbolt operators until he himself is finally cornered. Though he fought as hard as he could, Baranov is killed in action, and Strauss's research is sent back to Deadbolt HQ. After enough studies and analysis on Strauss's research, Dr. Jansen constructs the successor to her Ethereum neutralizer prototype. Soap, Ravenov, and Jansen, along with Deadbolt operators, are deployed into the field to activate the device. Fletcher, Zakhaev, and Terminus forces try to prevent them from accomplishing their mission, but in the midst of their firefight, an Ethereum-infected worm known as an Orcus emerges from the ground. Zombies, Deadbolt, and Terminus continue their fight against one another while trying to simultaneously defeat the Orcus that is now rampaging across the site, and provides a risk of destroying their Ethereum neutralizer. Risking her life, Jansen runs into the chaos towards the neutralizer, with Ravenov chasing close behind. Grabbing hold of the lever, Jansen activates the device just before the Orcus could devour her. What should have closed the rifts and cleansed the area failed. It only got worse. The Orcus was defeated, but a rift tears open, dragging in anything it can, including soldiers on both sides. Fletcher calls out for them to retreat, with Zakhaev calling him a coward. Gripping the raw Ethereum vial, Zakhaev prepares to unleash its power. But it goes dry. His plan foiled, dropping to his knees in shock. An agitated Fletcher drags Zakhaev out of the chaos. Meanwhile, Ava is lifted into the air, slowly levitating towards the rift when a silhouette shows itself, speaking to Ava. Regaining consciousness, Ava screams out in fear. The silhouette disappears and the rift closes. Ravenov quickly runs to Ava to check on her, informing him of hearing a voice from the other side that called out to her. Hoping the threat to be over, Soap and Ravenov are informed by Dobbs that instead a larger, more dangerous rift has opened above the city. Their journey is far from over. Sometime after this, Viktor Zakhaev simply leaves the plot. He walks away from the situation, leaving Fletcher and Terminus Outcomes without their owed payment. But at the same time, now they have an entire Ethereum harvest to themselves. Receiving an unknown signal from within the Dark Aether itself, Operation Deadbolt sends in a task force to investigate. What they come to find are 4 objects with seemingly no purpose to them. A bottle of pills, a camera, a dog collar, and a diary. These 4 items act as a seal that maintains the current rift. Before the squad could exit, however, another ether worm shows itself. The operators once again fend off the ether worm and conquer it. The entity opens a rift for them to exit through. Back at Deadbolt HQ, Jansen is suffering from a hallucinogenic nightmare. She envisions the HQ in emergency power and overrun with the undead. In the masses are 4 unique corpses, sporting purple glowing eyes, the bodies of Strauss, Carver, Gray, and Weaver. Hearing a voice call out from behind her, Ava swings her blade back, slicing Ravenov's throat. However, it was only a nightmare, as Ravenov is just fine. His voice is what broke her out of the entity's grasp. He informs her that the Deadbolt operators came across an entity, and Jansen leaves to participate in the briefing, leaving her laptop behind, showing the status of Weaver, Gray, Carver, Ravenov, and Samantha Maxis. When Zakhaev decided to leave the plot, he had left Terminus Outcomes with everything he had in his possession, including the documents on Omega Group. Jack Fletcher flipped through these documents and learned of all the twisted things they had enacted upon in the 1980s, all in the name for Mother Russia. But his main takeaway was that just across the dimensional veil was a universe filled to the brim with treasure that they could make millions from. Fletcher then had a meeting with his mercs and requested for 12 others to join him as he crosses into the Dark Aether. In the Red Zone, Fletcher and his men enter the Dark Aether with an ACV and part of Jansen's Ethereum neutralizer prototype. Deadbolt operators, along with Ravenov, were in the area upon their insertion to the other dimension, so they were quick to follow their trail. Once in the Dark Aether, Ravenov and Fletcher form a temporary alliance so that they could all escape with their lives. As Ravenov put it, "If we cannot put our differences aside in these circumstances, then we are little better than the beasts that inhabit this place." Deadbolt escorted the ACV to the scattered parts of Jansen's neutralizer, halted by a unique variant of the Mimic who could produce high-voltage electricity, which was causing the ACV to have a power overload. Obviously, the Deadbolt team took out the Electro-Mimic and continued escorting the device, now equipped with one part of the neutralizer. Fletcher provided his location to the team, a mall filled with nauseating cysts. It appears they were trapped inside, along with the other part of the neutralizer. And so, the Deadbolt operators meticulously took out the cysts that inhabited the mall, granting freedom to Fletcher and his men. Now with Operation Deadbolt and Terminus Outcomes working side by side, they finished the escort of the ACV to a series of spotlights that suddenly appeared ahead of them. On the stage is one of Barrera's PNDs, which is awaiting the neutralizer device. Deadbolt and Terminus boot up the PND, protecting it from the sudden incoming horde. It takes its sweet time, but when it's finished, a rift opens, allowing for their escape. Fletcher's men cross through the rift, and before Fletcher joins them, thanks Deadbolt for the assist, and unleashes a grenade that summons an electromagnetic mangler, perhaps based on Carver's satellite tech in the 80s. The rift closed, and a new nuisance in their presence, Ravenov and the Deadbolt operators take the creature down, which somehow reopens the rift. Now back at Deadbolt HQ, Ravenov tends to his wounds, when Ava Jansen enters the room. Stopping him from butchering his stitches any further, she takes over, while pushing him for information on Requiem, Samantha, their Ethereum research, and his involvement. Not ready to disclose that information yet, Ravenov tells Ava that perhaps when the mission is over, they can talk about the old days. Agitated, Ava leaves the room, telling Ravenov that if he won't help her, she'll find her own answers. Before we dive into their next operation, let's catch up with 2 of Deadbolt's personnel, Crystal Miller and Hugo Barrera. Believing Ravenov may have the answers she seeks, based on how he doesn't seem fazed by anything that's going on, Crystal Miller confides in Ravenov, opening up on her traumatic past, the outbreak at Liberty Falls in 1991. Cutting her off before she can say more, Ravenov apologizes to her. For a child to be there, to witness such tragedy and atrocity. He asks for her to recall her past in hopes that it could provide comfort and provide closure. For Miller, she finally found someone who even acknowledged that it happened. Everyone she met, especially those in the government, wouldn't comment on it, acting as if it never happened. But here it was, a chance to get closure on an event that forever changed her life. Over with Dr. Barrera. Having now been on the field, he's come to realize the sacrifices being made to simply provide him with his Ethereum samples or subjects for autopsies. Operators die every day in the field over this. It's beginning to weigh on him. He regrets even joining Operation Deadbolt. It was filled with wonders at the start, but now, it's just loss. Back with Ava Jansen, believing she's not getting the support she needs in order to stop the outbreaks or uncover her history, Jansen goes rogue in the field, entering a Dark Aether rift after a voice calls out for her. Once again, Ravenov and a squad of Deadbolt operatives enter the Dark Aether to chase after her, to prevent her from contacting the entity. However, they are too late. Jansen and the entity have begun the process of reunion. Ravenov and the operators quickly destroy a series of Ethereum crystals which are creating a storm that is blocking their way to Jansen. With the storm dissipating, the operators must do one more thing in order to rescue Jansen from the entity's clutches. Like their first time into the Dark Aether, the operatives must break seals, and to break the final seal, they had to defeat a special variant of the Disciple, able to summon other HVTs. When the Disciple was defeated, Jansen returned to them. Ravenov helps Jansen to her feet, and together they all exfil through a Dark Aether rift. Upset with Jansen's actions and her obsession with Gray's research, Ravenov finally tells Jansen of her origins. Playing a video that Gray left for Jansen the day she died, she comes to learn that her parents are Samantha Maxis and Elizabeth Gray, with DNA from Ravenov, and maybe the others. Finally given closure on her mother, and forgiving her for leaving. Ravenov, however, she does not forgive. Angry at not being told of this sooner, Ravenov tells her that he did not choose to be her father, which obviously only infuriates her more. Storming out of the room once again, leaving Ravenov to sit in his thoughts of regret and guilt. After presumably months of not letting his team in on anything about himself, Soap forces Ravenov to sit down with Green and to settle their differences. Ravenov tries to keep his secrets to himself, but both Soap and Green say how they can't trust him if they know nothing about him, and that it's preventing Green from doing her job. And so, he finally does, although with the microphone off. And I guess this happened off camera because Ava and Ravenov also worked out their problems. Ravenov offers his full support in confronting the entity and severing her connection with it. Which brings us to the final mission, Ascension. No, not the Zombies map. Together with the Deadbolt operators, they obtain the relics from Ava's and the entity's pasts, a series of items that were also used to open special rifts, but that's not relevant. With the relics obtained, the storm atop the tower fades away, allowing them safe passage. Using the rooftop and the floating islands, the Deadbolt team bounce up to a floating ship that hovers above the tower, where a rift awaits them. And finally, the entity truly reveals itself. Unwilling to unite with her sister, Ava begins using her memories against the entity, who further retaliates its wrath on Ravenov and the operators, believing it to be protection for Ava. A fight ensues, and the operators manage to defeat the entity. Or so they thought. Returning, angrier than before, the entity unleashes more lethal attacks. The operators are no longer able to harm the entity, needing Ava's power to break the entity's protection seal. Only then can they begin delivering blows. They repeat this process several times until the entity is finally defeated, fading away. But before it does, the entity warns Ava of an ancient, powerful enemy known as the Shadowsmiths. With the entity defeated, Ava's mind is finally quiet. The voices have left her alone, and on recommendation from Ravenov, Ava tries to take a vacation. And though the game doesn't state it, we can assume that following the entity's defeat, the rifts and outbreak in Urzikstan came to an end. The fate of Terminus outcomes isn't known, however, and neither is the state of Operation Deadbolt, but we can assume it went back to being deactivated until needed again. 3 months after the end of the entity, Ava simply couldn't keep her curiosity at bay. Instead of doing a normal vacation like Ravenov suggested, Ava traveled to Liberty Falls, West Virginia, in possession of documents from both Project Janus and Operation Deadbolt. Ravenov provides Ava with a phone call to check up on her, quickly telling her to leave Liberty Falls when she tells him where she is. It's here that a shadowy figure catches Ava's attention, residing in the mirror. A hand reaches out for her, believing to see her mother. Before she could pull back, the hand grabs hold of Ava's wrist and pulls her through to the other side. Her current fate is a mystery. Before we end things off, I'm going to discuss some miscellaneous info that I just didn't know where else to fit in. Jack Fletcher and Lucas Dobbs both share the same birth date. The only difference is the year they were born. May 24th, 1972 for Fletcher and 1995 for Dobbs. The game also revealed the complete birth date for Ravenov, being April 20th, 1951. And finally, Crystal Miller is born in either 1985 or 86. Mentioned earlier in the video was the existence of cysts. These nauseating growths are spread across buildings in the Urzikstan Outbreak zone, acting similar to Ethereum crystals in that they provide life to the undead, also housing creatures known as nest crawlers. According to Ravenov, Professor Gabriel Kraft came across these in the 1940s. Two of the operators from multiplayer actually have zombies lured to them. Ayatayo Ripper Davies, who was initially a police officer but felt unsatisfied with doing paperwork and bureaucracy, so she joined the Urzikstan Liberation Force, partaking in the defeat of Roman Barkov in Modern Warfare 2019. Her skills led to her being recommended to Operation Deadbolt. And the other is Zirian Scorch Serhadi Hadid, who originally worked for Terminus Outcomes and was even present at the Outbreak Zone when Zakhaev unleashed the bioweapon. It was actually this very moment that deeply disturbed him, causing him to defect to Operation Deadbolt. Moving on to Terminus HVTs, we mentioned him before, but Legacy Barabanov is one of them, followed by Ari Dakaibi, Sona Karaz Mirzoyan, and Rainmaker. Their backgrounds are mostly untold and they basically serve no purpose. They were each hired to hold strategic positions in the Outbreak Zone and to fend off any Deadbolt operatives. Dokaibi specifically liked to toy with Deadbolt's technology and Lucas Dobbs. Karaz was developing a new bioweapon using Ethereum. Rainmaker has an unhealthy obsession with rockets and explosives, and Legacy was just a talented and skilled mercenary. And finally, why Al Mazrah? The location you visit in Dark Aether, it is fragmented pieces of Al Mazrah, a warzone map for Modern Warfare 2. Ava Jansen mentions finding this place familiar to her, but I'm uncertain if she means Al Mazrah or the Dark Aether itself. The answer to my question is, I don't know. Obviously it was just reused assets due to limited time to make the mode, but surely there's a lore implication. But anyway, that's it. That's all there is to know about Modern Warfare 3 Zombies. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, I wouldn't say no to a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.